The fastest way to stay poor is not to make one catastrophic mistake. It is to keep making ordinary purchases that feel harmless today while they quietly destroy tomorrow. That is the real trap. Most people imagine financial failure as something dramatic. A bad business, a layoff, a divorce, a terrible investment, a hospital bill. Sometimes it is. But in most ordinary lives, poverty is not built through one explosion. It is built through repetition. One car payment too large for the income, one scratch-off habit that never looks serious enough to confront. One convenience meal, one monthly fee, one payment plan, one little relief purchase, then another, then another. That is how a future gets eaten alive without looking like a disaster. So let me give you the one mother line that everything in this story serves. People stay poor when they keep buying comfort, convenience, and status faster than they build ownership, liquidity, and compounding. That is the line. Not one bad month, not one weak moment, repeated default consumption. Because once you understand that, every small purchase starts looking different. A brand new car is no longer transportation. It is future capital converted into depreciation. A lottery ticket is no longer harmless hope. It is a retirement contribution burned for a fantasy. Fast food is no longer just lunch. It is a repeated leak in the system. A rent to own sofa is no longer furniture. It is a poverty machine charging you luxury prices for ordinary objects. That is the deeper truth. Now, let me show you the mechanisms. The first mechanism is depreciation worship. This is where people confuse looking established with becoming secure. A person gets a decent job. Maybe it is the first real step up they have ever had. And almost immediately there is pressure to buy the most visible symbol of progress. The new car, that is depreciation worship. A new car is one of the cleanest wealth killing transactions available to ordinary people because it combines four destructive forces at once: a high sticker price, interest expense, higher insurance, and rapid value collapse. The thing starts falling in value the moment you own it, while the payment remains painfully real for years. That is what makes it so destructive. The person tells themselves they bought reliability, pride, adulthood, reward for hard work. What they often bought was a monthly payment that competes directly with investing, emergency savings, and future optionality. The first years of wealth building are the worst time to trap cash flow inside a fast depreciating asset, and yet that is exactly when people do it, because the social symbolism is so powerful. A used car that is 2 to 4 years old, proven reliable, already hit by the steepest depreciation, often solves the transportation problem far better than the new car solves the ego problem. That is depreciation worship. Now let us move to the second mechanism. I call it hope tax. This is the lottery mechanism. What makes the lottery so dangerous is that it does not sell a financial asset. It sells emotional escape. That is why it survives so well in lower income households. It gives the buyer a cheap temporary break from powerlessness. For a few dollars, they get to imagine a version of life where the struggle ends suddenly. That imagination feels tiny in price and enormous in relief. That is exactly why it is so expensive over time. The lottery is not just a bad bet because the odds are absurd. It is a bad system because it replaces strategy with ritual. The buyer gets to feel as though action has been taken while nothing productive has actually been built. The account balance does not grow. The emergency fund does not fill. The Roth IRA does not get funded. But hope got rented again for one more week. That is hope tax. A person who keeps buying lottery tickets is not merely spending on entertainment. They are diverting money away from the very kind of slow, boring compounding that could have become a genuine escape route. They are trading almost guaranteed long run progress for almost certain short run disappointment. That is why it matters so much. Hope without process becomes a poverty habit. Hope with investing becomes a wealth habit. That is hope tax. Now let us move to the third mechanism. I call it emergency harvesting. This is one of the ugliest parts of the system, A person is cornered, rent is due. The car needs work, the lights might go off, a child needs something now. And in that compressed moment, high-cost lenders appear offering speed, that is, emergency harvesting, payday loans, and cash advances do not exist because they are good products. They exist because they feed on moments where time matters more than price to the borrower. The borrower is not shopping. The borrower is bleeding. That is why the terms can be so vicious. The business model assumes the person does not have enough room to compare, negotiate, or think clearly. A short-term fee that becomes a grotesque annualized rate is not a technical detail. It is the whole crime. And once the first payment comes due, the borrower often discovers the original problem was not solved, merely delayed and enlarged. Then comes the rollover. Then the next fee, then the next squeeze. That is how one emergency becomes a financial climate. The real answer here is not cleverness. It is defense. Emergency funds, payment plans, asking for extensions. Anything that is uglier emotionally, but less predatory mathematically. Because if you do not build a layer of liquidity, then emergencies become other people's profit opportunity. That is emergency harvesting. Now, let us move to the fourth mechanism. I call it installment illusion. This is how poverty gets sold to people in soft language. Not, you are paying 4 times the value. Not, this is financially insane. No, the pitch is always monthly. Only this much a month, you can afford this. You deserve a nice place to sit. You deserve the bigger screen. You deserve the comfort. Now, that is installment illusion. Rent to own furniture and electronics are built on one central trick. They hide the insult inside time. A couch that would be manageable at its real price becomes grotesquely expensive once it is stretched into a long payment stream. The customer sees access. The company sees a captive buyer paying luxury economics for ordinary goods. That is why this trap is so sneaky. The person does not think they are being exploited. They think they are finally getting included. But inclusion at a terrible price is not inclusion. It is extraction. The wealthy are trained to ask the full price. The trapped are trained to ask the monthly payment. That difference explains a lot more than most people realize. That is installment illusion. Now, let us move to the fifth mechanism. I call it micro-fear insurance. This is where insecurity gets turned into a recurring revenue model. Every checkout page asks the same question in a different voice. Would you like protection? Would you like coverage? Would you like peace of mind? That sounds wise. Often it is not. That is micro-fear insurance. Extended warranties on small electronics, protection plans on gadgets, phone insurance with ugly deductibles, service contracts on minor items. These products are usually not about protecting you from catastrophe. They are about monetizing your discomfort with inconvenience. The item is too small to justify formal insurance. The odds of failure are too low, or the original warranty already covers enough of the risk. Yet the buyer keeps paying because the fear feels real. This is where financial maturity matters. The wealthy insure against disasters that could materially harm the household. The poor, thinking consumer often insures against annoyances. That is an expensive habit because every small protection payment that did not need to exist is money not entering the reserve account that would make self-insurance possible. That is the hidden irony. People buy little insurance products precisely because they did not build enough liquid strength to stop fearing every breakage event. That is why I call it micro-fear insurance. It is fear sold in tiny monthly pieces. Now let us move to the sixth mechanism. I call it subscription sedation. This is one of the softest forms of financial self-destruction and one of the hardest to feel. Streaming services, premium channels, sports packages, cloud storage, music apps, internet bundles. Just one more recurring charge. Nothing hurts enough to trigger an alarm. That is exactly why it works. Subscription sedation turns the present into a permanent claim on the future. Each charge looks small enough to ignore. Together they become a leak large enough to matter. And because the payment is automatic, the customer stops experiencing it as a decision at all. It becomes background weather. That is why it is so dangerous. Money disappears most efficiently when it no longer feels chosen. This is not an argument against entertainment. It is an argument against invisibility. If recurring comfort spending is rising while investing, emergency savings, and debt destruction remain underfunded, then the household has accidentally ranked amusement above freedom. That does not show up as a dramatic mistake. It shows up years later as a life that still has no margin. That is subscription sedation. Now let us move to the seventh mechanism. I call it convenience bleed. This is the final trap because it lives inside fatigue. A coffee out, a fast lunch, a gas station drink, a snack run, a takeout dinner because the day was hard, a little purchase because time felt short. None of these look serious. That is why they become serious. That is convenience bleed. The convenience economy makes money by monetizing your exhaustion. It knows that tired people do not perform long. Range math well. They perform relief. $5 here, $10 there. $15 because cooking feels like too much tonight. The person is not buying food only, they are buying a break. But repeated breaks at premium pricing become a lifestyle tax. What makes this mechanism vicious is that it never asks for a dramatic surrender. It only asks for one more small yes, then another, then another. Over months and years, the difference between planned low-cost nourishment and reactive convenience consumption becomes enormous, not only financially, but behaviorally. The person becomes someone whose cash flow is constantly being harvested by fatigue, that is, convenience bleed. And it is one of the clearest examples of how poor thinking is often not about low intelligence. It is about an environment where every tired moment has a product ready to capture it. Now I want to force the identity shift, because without it this still sounds like a shopping list instead of a real wealth philosophy. Stop thinking like someone trying to spend a little less. Start thinking like a future defender. A spender asks, "Can I afford this today?" A future defender asks, "What happens if this habit repeats for 10 years? A spender sees one purchase. A future defender sees sequence. A spender buys relief. A future defender buys room. That is the stronger identity. Because once you think that way, all 7 categories reveal their true job. Depreciation worship, hope tax, emergency harvesting, installment illusion, micro-fear insurance, subscription sedation, convenience bleed. They are all systems that convert present emotion into future weakness while making the conversion feel completely normal. And now let me give you the operating system plainly. First, stop buying fast depreciating status assets before you have real asset strength. Reliable used beats financed image. Second, cut lottery spending completely. Hope is not an investment strategy. Build an emergency reserve, so urgency does not push you into predatory debt. Fourth, always calculate the full price, not the monthly payment. Installment language is often where the trap hides. Fifth, reserve insurance for catastrophic risks and self-insure small inconveniences through savings. Sixth, audit every recurring entertainment and subscription expense. Invisible leaks still drain the future. Seventh, reduce convenience spending by planning food, drinks, and small needs before fatigue gets the chance to price them for you. That is the heart of it. Wealth is not only built by what you buy, it is built by what stops getting permission to quietly eat your future. That is what most people miss. Now, let me end where this really matters. You can keep telling yourself, these are all little things. You can keep assuming a few payments, a few tickets, a few subscriptions, a few convenience purchases cannot possibly be what is holding you back. You can keep hoping the future will improve while the daily pattern funding that future stays exactly the same. Or you can do the harder thing. You can treat every small purchase like a long-term boat. You can stop financing the costume of relief. You can redirect the leaks into ownership. You can build the cash reserve. You can buy less theater and more freedom. And you can make sure your money is no longer being consumed by habits that look harmless but compound like poison. That is the threshold. because financial freedom is rarely destroyed by one giant wrong decision. It is usually starved by hundreds of socially normal ones. That is the mirror. Look into it carefully. If these same categories keep showing up in your month, then whatever else is true, your future may still be paying for your present much more than it should.